Hi, this is James Gwynn. I want to thank everybody who responded to the survey for the email about in-person worship. We sent that out in January and we got the responses back, and it was very helpful. The survey was regarding in-person worship or the lack thereof at Acworth United Methodist Church. The response was great, with over 217 people, individual responses. That was from about 500 invitations that were sent out. And so that has been a great response, and you have been heard. I appreciate everyone who participated in that. I, the Acworth United Methodist Church church manager, several committees, leaders reviewed these results. Some of the comments will be forwarded to other committees so that they will be heard as well. I want to do three things here. First, I want to share the survey results. Two, a few learnings and comments. And then number three, I'm going to share what our worship reopen plans are moving forward. In the survey, question number one, there were only 5 questions, basically said, at what point would you be comfortable returning to in-person worship at Acworth United Methodist Church? 35% said that they would return this week if we open for worship. 19% said that they would return when the COVID rates are lower. 36% after they receive a vaccine and after restrictions are lifted. And if you take the 19% and the 36%, that'd be 55% that say they're waiting for it to be safer. And then 9% said other. On question number 2, it said, have you been watching the Acworth United Methodist Church's online worship announcements or devotions? Have you been participating sort of with the online ministries? 42% said that they continue to participate with Acworth United Methodist Church online. 38% said they still participate, but not as consistently as they did originally. 13% said they either don't have access to participate online or that they choose not to. 7% said other on that. Under the household information, 16% said there was only one person in their household that responded to this. 52.5% said they have 2 adults in the household, but no children or no children under 18. If you add those first 2 together, that means almost 70% of our worshipers here that responded to this survey don't have children in the household. 27% said they have at least one child under 18 years old, and 3% said they have a mixed or blended household. Then there was 1% said other. Question number 4 said, if you reported having children under 18 that were worshiping with you before COVID, do they expect you expect them to worship with you after COVID is over? And 59% said yes. 22 said no %, but in that, several said that they were going to be off at college by the time all of this is over. 20% responded other on that question as well. Question number 5 was a click everything that applies, and we just had a list of several things, and you could click on as many of those as that apply to you. The first group of questions was how has COVID actually affected you and the family? 16% reported either they or someone in their household had COVID. 26% reported that they or someone in their household has received at least one vaccination. So I consider that a very positive result, that we've had more people reporting being vaccinated than we have actually having COVID. 19% have not had COVID and are not worried about getting it. 44% say they will continue to limit COVID exposure until the risk is lower. When we talk about, we looked at outside worship. Would outside worship be a viable option for those who want to come back sooner rather than later? 21% said they would participate in parking lot worship, but not inside worship until the COVID risks are much lower. 41% said they would worship inside now with masks and with distancing. 35% said that if inside worship were offered now, they would continue to worship online until the COVID risks were much lower. And then the final three questions that you could click on had to do with how many people were familiar with the Acworth United Methodist COVID policy. And 33% said they have read it and felt it was adequate. 15% said they've read it and felt it was too restrictive. 29.5%, almost 30%, said they haven't read it and were not familiar with it. Now, I confess that this survey is far from scientific. However, I do believe that it reflects what I and others are hearing from the congregation as they have been sharing. So now that we've heard the results, let me make a couple of comments before we move on to when are we going to reopen worship. First, I absolutely love that almost everyone wants to be back in worship as safely as possible, as soon as possible. But what is safe and what is soon seems to be relative from person to person. 35% said they'll come right now. They're willing to take the risk and willing to be careful and to do what it takes for us to keep each other safe. I'm with you 100%. Acworth worship brings me joy. It renews my strength. It lifts my spirit. It recharges my spiritual batteries. This is not true for me with only streamed worship. I like the streamed worship. I just don't feel the connection. And I love worship because of God and because of you. Worshiping with you is part of what makes worship meaningful and a blessing to me. That in-person part of worship that I love as your pastor is missing. A disappointment and somewhat painful part of looking through the survey results was reading the responses that focused on mask wearing. I'm not here to persuade anyone to change their mind, nor will I try. I dislike wearing a mask. I wear it to protect others and as a sign that I care about protecting others, period. Mask wearing is not about me or the Supreme Court or fear or my rights to communicate, freedom of speech. Wearing a mask is not about how much I do or don't trust God or what my favorite politician says to do or not to do or even the Constitution. I choose to wear a mask because this infectious virus has now killed more United States citizens in 11 months than the total U.S. soldiers killed in World War II with guns and bombs. Yes, most people that get it recover fine. But if you look at the number of people who don't, I'm not willing to risk their lives because I'm willing to do something or not do it. More than a few responded seemed to think that I've kept us from worshiping because I or the church leaders here are too afraid or even lack faith. Two responses actually, called the leadership sheepish or called me sheepish. I don't think that's true. I hear you and I hear your frustration and your disappointment. I disagree with the assessment. For me, it would have been easier to continue to worship. It was more fearful for me not to worship than it would have been to actually continue to worship. It takes enormous faith in God and a great deal of trust in the faithfulness of the members of Acworth United Methodist Church to not worship. Frankly, many of the pastors I've talked to privately continued to worship because they were afraid of losing members and losing offerings. That's not what we're called to do as church. And so if I was going to make a mistake, I wanted to make it on the side of safety. My reason for restricting worship was not based on fear, but on safety. I want to protect the people that I greatly love. I want to protect people that I don't even know because they're friends and family of the people that I love. And I desire to protect people who do not want me protecting them at all. For those who label me sheepish, I'm okay. I can live with that label. In Matthew 25, the sheep are the ones who are saved, specifically because they helped the least, the last, and the lost. So at the end of the day, this is what it boils down to for me. The COVID-19 virus does not care whether you are right or I am right. I'm willing to risk a COVID infection based on the statistics that I see. I think my odds of recovering are fairly high. Yet, no one that I've talked to that got it recommends it. And as the assigned shepherd of this flock at Acworth United Methodist Church, I will protect my church family members, and by doing that, help protect their friends and their family. It will err on the side of safety, and if I can help prevent the spread, I will. Have I been too careful? Probably. I take responsibility for being cautious. Yes, it hurts my heart that some Acworthonians are worshiping elsewhere. I respect their choice and selfishly hope that they will return home to Acworth United Methodist Church. One part of the survey that really concerned me more than everything else was the 13% that responded to say they don't have access or choose not to participate in the online ministries of Acworth. I deeply regret that that's such a high percentage and that they're being missed, and that if you're one of those, you matter a great deal to me. I would love for you to get in touch with myself or Angie, text, email, phone, calling the church office so that we can make some sort of arrangement so that we can check in with you on a regular basis and make sure you know that you are loved and cared about here at Acworth United Methodist Church. So finally, where do we go from here? After prayerfully listening to the survey results, consulting with 2 different clergy groups that I'm a part of, speaking with our district superintendent, discussing with staff and others, I and the staff modified our current plan and recommended to the trustees and to the administrative council that we change our thresholds to these numbers, that our code green would basically say the same. So that's anything less than 1 has no restrictions. We won't even have to wear masks, distance, or anything. We're not there yet. That's cases less than 1, and I'll explain what 1 means in just a minute. Code yellow would be anything greater than 1 and less than 25. So that's code yellow. Code orange is anything greater than 25 and less than 40. And then code red, where everything sort of shuts down except essential services, will be any COVID count greater than 40. Now, where these numbers come from, it's the Worldwide Pandemic Response Code Chart, and it basically says that the number 40 means that there's 40 new cases in a county per capita over a 7-day average. So, the number for Cobb County today is 20.9. That means today's average is, over a 7-day period, 20.9 new cases of COVID for every 100,000 people living in Cobb County is what makes up that count. Paulding County today was 21.5. So that means an average of a 7-day average of 21.5 people are new cases being reported to the Paulding County Department of Health by hospitals and others. And so that's a running average. And that's where we get our numbers from. We look at both Cobb and Paulding County. Under these thresholds, and based on current counts, we're assuming that we can restart in-person worship at 11 a.m. on February 28th. So that's not on the 21st this week, but the 28th the next week. That gives us a little time to do some cleaning and finish some of the equipment that we've ordered, streaming equipment, to be the installation to be complete. Streaming will continue, probably for the foreseeable future. Don't know that we're ever going to stop streaming at this point. There have been advantages for homebound people or whatever to be able to have access to that. And we actually have worshipers from across the United States that are joining us on a fairly regular basis. On occasion, the live stream may not work, as we found out this past week. And so when that happens, we will post information online as soon as we can. And if we have a valid recording of the worship service, we will post that as soon after worship is over as we can. As long as one county, Cobb or Paulding, stays in the yellow zone, which is, as we said, above, make sure I get this right again, below 25 cases being reported, as long as one of the counties stays in that yellow zone or a green zone, and neither county is red, Acworth United Methodist Church will continue careful in-person worship, going back to our old worship times, 11 o'clock and 9 a.m. I'll say more about the 9 a.m. worship service in just a moment. Staff and volunteers will not be required to be on campus during in-person worship. Each will be given the grace to decide what is best for them and for their families on a week-by-week basis. So when they're ready to come back, they can. There won't be any punishment or anything for those who say, I just don't feel safe coming. Mask and distance keeping are required inside the buildings, as well as other safety precautions to limit the risk of viral spread. Based on space and airflow, the capacity for the sanctuary that I'm in now is 175 worshipers. The 9:30 a.m. contemporary worship service will be delayed restarting, but will resume in person as soon as possible, based on the availability of musicians, equipment being installed and working, and volunteers, greeters, someone to run the soundboard and run the streaming equipment, that those people are available on a dependable basis. Based on space and airflow, McClure Hall is currently limited to 55 on an in-person worship. No registration is going to be required to start. Many in the survey indicated they didn't like that. As worship attendance approaches our capacities, though, we ask for grace and patience and flexibility. As vaccination numbers go up and as the infection cases come down, I'm confident that restrictions will be phased out in the months ahead. As before, please continue to check with Acworth United Methodist Church on our Facebook page, on our website, on weekly emails that we send out in the middle of most weeks for the most up-to-date information that we have. If those don't work for you, please call your favorite staff member or church leader, and if they don't know the answer to your question, they'll look it up and get back to you as quickly as possible. Acworth United Methodist Church is a great church. This has been demonstrated many times over during this year-long plus challenge. We are great because of each of you. Acworth greatly blesses me, God blesses me, and we bless this community as together we are Acworth United Methodist Church. So I thank you for your time and prayerful attention, and I pray that you stay safe, my friends. Amen.